Hello everyone. In this segment, we will cover three topics. These are understanding mind and behavior, popular notions about the discipline of psychology, and evolution of psychology. So, the first topic is understanding mind and behavior. So, we all know that psychology was once defined as a science of the mind. But for many decades, the mind remained a taboo in psychology because it could not be defined in concrete behavioral terms or its location could not be indicated. But if the term mind has returned to psychology, we should thank neuroscientists like Sperry and physicists like Penrose, who have given it the respect which it deserved and now has. There are scientists in various disciplines, including psychology, who think that a unified theory of the mind is a possibility, although it still is far away. Actually, psychologists for many decades did not use the word mind because it is not a scientific term. We cannot locate our mind. But modern physicists and neuroscientists, they have stated that mind really exists, and they have proved it also through some research studies. So the question arises now, what is mind and is it same as the brain? Actually, mind and brain both are separate entity. Mind cannot be located, there is no physical location in the mind, but brain can be located, there is a physical structure in the brain. So in that sense, both are separated, both are different. Now this can be appreciated on account of several interesting cases that have been documented. Some patients whose occipital lobes, which are responsible for vision, were surgically removed, have been found to be responding correctly to location and configuration of visual cues. This indicates that mind really exists. Actually, one important lobe of the brain, that is occipital lobe, mainly responsible for our vision, and that lobe was surgically removed from some patients' brain, but that those patients were able to locate things, were able to see things. This means that mind exists. Now, recent studies in affective neuroscience have clearly shown that there is a relationship between mind and behavior, and they state that mind and behavior are highly related. Although some psychologists, they have proved that mind and body both are parallel to one another and both are separate. Psychologists and philosophers, they have proved that mind and body are different, they are parallel to one another. But recent studies in affective neuroscience, they have clearly shown that mind and behavior are highly related, and it has been shown that using positive visualization techniques and by feeling positive emotions actually, one can bring about significant changes in bodily processes, and psychologists have proved them. And by using all these techniques, if we use positive visualization techniques and if we develop some positive emotions, then also we can overcome our bodily processes. Actually, it is possible for us to cure some problems that are available in our body. Now, Ornish has shown this in a number of studies with his patients. In his studies, a person with blocked arteries was made to visualize that blood was flowing through his or her blocked arteries. After practicing this over a period of time, significant relief was obtained by these patients as the degree of blockage became significantly less. So use of mental imagery, actually, that is images generated by a person in his or her mind, have been used to cure various kinds of phobias also. Phobia, actually, it is one kind of problem, psychological problem related to irrational fears of objects and situations. So by using all these positive visualization techniques and some positive emotions, we can overcome all the difficulties available in our body. That is possible because of the mind only. So there is one new discipline, actually, that is known as psychoneuroimmunology. So it has emerged, which emphasizes the role played by the mind in strengthening the immune system. So it states that if there is any problem in the immune system or problem in other body parts, but we can overcome all these problems if our mind is strong. So that discipline is known as psychoneuroimmunology. That means mind, body and immune system. So all these are highly interrelated. So this topic states that mind and behavior are highly related. Then the second topic, that is known as popular notions about the discipline of psychology. Actually, popular notions means the common sense view. Now, common sense views about the psychology, actually discipline of psychology is different from the scientific psychology. Now, psychologists' viewpoints or psychologists' conclusions actually are totally different from the common people. Although some of their views are similar to the psychologists, but all views of psychologists are not always same as the common sense views. So this topic hence known as the popular notions about the discipline of psychology. So actually everyone wants to act like a psychologist, and hence they think that they are same as psychologists, because they also are able to solve problems and they always face lots of difficulties, and it is because of their own thoughts or own activities they are able to solve all these difficulties, and hence they always think that they are same as psychologists. Some examples actually are given here. Some popular theories of human behavior based on common sense may or may not be true if investigated scientifically. So, for example, commonsensical explanations of human behavior are based on hindsight and explain very little. For example, if a friend you love goes away to a distant place, what will happen to your attraction for him or her? So, there are two different sayings which you may recall to answer this question. So one of them is out of sight is out of mind, and the second is distance makes the heart grow fonder. So these are two different views actually accepted by different people. So these are opposite statements. So which one is true? Okay, so the explanations you choose will depend on what happens in your life after your friend leaves. So this explanations or conclusion is totally based on your own experience. Suppose you are able to find a new friend. The saying out of sight, out of mind will be used by you or others to explain your behavior. If you are unable to find a new friend, you will keep remembering your friend fondly. So in this case, the saying distance makes the heart grow fonder will explain your behavior. Now notice that in both cases the explanation follows the occurrence of behavior. So common sense in that sense is based on hindsight. Psychology as a science looks for patterns of behavior which can be predicted and not explained after the behavior occurs. Now, scientific knowledge generated by psychology often runs against common sense, because scientific psychology is totally based on systematic studies. It is based on some facts. So, on the basis of some scientific principles, psychologists always draw the conclusions. Now, one such example is a study performed by Dweck in the year 1975, and it proved that the common sense views are totally different from the psychologist viewpoints. Actually, she was concerned with children who gave up too easily when faced with a difficult problem or failure. She wondered how they could be helped. Now, common sense tells us to give them easy problems in order to increase their success rate so that their confidence goes up. Only later should we give them difficult problems which they will be able to solve because of their newfound confidence. Now, Dweck's study tested this. She took two groups of students who were trained for 25 days in solving mathematical problems. The first group was given easy problems which they were always able to solve. But the second group had a mix of easy and difficult problems. Obviously, in case of difficult problems, they fail because the problems were the tough problems. And whenever this happened, Dweck told them that their failure was because they had not tried hard enough and persuaded them not to give up and keep trying. After the training period was over, a new set of math problems were given to two groups. What Dweck found goes against common belief. Those who had always succeeded because they were given easy problems gave up much faster when they faced failure than those who had experience of both success and failure and were taught to attribute failure to their lack of effort. একচুৱেলি কমন পিপুলে কয় যে আমি ল'ৰা ছোৱালীবিলাকক যদি সৰুতে প্ৰথমতে ইজি প্ৰব্লেম দিওঁ তেতিয়াহ'লে ইজি প্ৰব্লেমবোৰ ছল্ভ কৰি এটা সময়ত সিহঁতি টান প্ৰব্লেমো ছল্ভ কৰিব পৰা হয়, কিন্তু ডুৱেকৰ ষ্টাডিটোৱে এইটো ৰং বুলি প্ৰুভ কৰিলে। তেওঁ প্ৰুভ কৰি দেখুৱালে যে যিবিলাক ল'ৰা ছোৱালীয়ে প্ৰথমৰ পৰাই টাফ প্ৰব্লেমছবিলাক বা হাৰ্ড প্ৰব্লেমছবিলাক ফেচ কৰিছে সেইবিলাক ল'ৰা ছোৱালীয়ে ইমান সোনকালে মানে ছিটুৱেশ্যনটোৰ পৰা আঁতৰি অহা নাই বা এক্সামৰ টাইমত সিহঁতি কি হোৱা নাই, ফ্ৰাষ্ট্ৰেটেড হোৱা নাই বা ফেইলিয়াৰ ফেচ কৰা নাই। যদিও প্ৰব্লেমছবিলাক মানে লাষ্ট টান পাইছে সিহঁতি কিন্তু ফেচ কৰিব পৰা হৈছে। তাৰমানে কি কমন পিপুলে যিটো কথা কৈছে সেই ভিউ পইণ্টটো চাইক'লজিষ্টৰ ভিউ পইণ্টৰ লগত একেবাৰে মিলা নাই। So psychologists in that sense are different from the common people actually. There are many other common sense notions যিবিলাক আমি ধৰা মানে সঁচা বুলি নাভাবিবও পাৰোঁ। Not too long ago, it was believed in some cultures that men are more intelligent than women and women cause more accidents than men. These are common sense views. কমন মানুহে ভাবে যে মেল পিপলবিলাকে ফিমেলতকৈ বেছি মানে ইণ্টেলিজেণ্ট হয় বা উমেনে খুব বেছি সোনকালে এক্সিডেণ্ট কৰে মেনতকৈ, কিন্তু একচুৱেলি এইবিলাক বস্তু এম্পিৰিকেল ষ্টাডিয়ে কিন্তু কি কৰিছে, ৰং বুলি প্ৰুভ কৰিছে। এই দুইটা ছিটুৱেশ্যনে ৰং হ'ব পাৰে। কেতিয়াবা আমি দেখোঁ যে ফিমেলবিলাকো বেছি ষ্ট্ৰং হয়, মেলবিলাক অলপ উইক হয়, আৰু কেতিয়াবা আমি দেখোঁ তাৰ অপজিট ভিউ পইণ্ট একচুৱেলি ফিমেলবিলাকৰ এক্সিডেণ্ট নহ'ব পাৰে, মেলৰহে বেছি এক্সিডেণ্ট হ'ব পাৰে। গতিকে এই কমন চেন্স ভিউজবিলাকৰ লগত চাইণ্টিফিক ষ্টাডিজ বা চাইক'লজিকেল ষ্টাডিজবিলাক সদায় একে নহয়। চ' কমন চেন্স tells us that one is not able to give one's best if you are asked to perform before a large audience. So psychological studies have shown that if you have practiced well, you may actually perform better because the presence of others help your performance. গতিকে কমন মানুহে ভাবে যে অডিয়েন্সৰ আগত মানে আমি কথা ক'বলৈ লাজ কৰোঁ বা আমি কথা ক'ব নোৱাৰোঁ, যদি অকলে কামটো কৰিবলৈ দিয়া হয় ভালকৈ কৰিব পাৰোঁ। কিন্তু চাইক'লজিকেল মানে এক্সপেৰিমেণ্টছবিলাকে কৈ এইবিলাক ৰং বুলি প্ৰুভ কৰিছে, আৰু চাইক'লজিষ্টে এইটো প্ৰমাণ কৰি দেখাইছে যে অডিয়েন্সে কেতিয়াবা আমাক ইনফ্লুৱেঞ্চো কৰে। বহুত মানুহৰ প্ৰেজেঞ্চত আমাৰ কেতিয়াবা বিহেভিয়াৰ্ছবিলাকো কি হয়, বেছি ফেচিলিটেটহে হয়। চ' ডেট ইজ ওৱান কমন কনচেপ্ট একচুৱেলি, ডেট ইজ নন এ ছ'চিয়েল ফেচিলিটেশ্যন। গতিকে এই যিবিলাক চাইক'লজিষ্টৰ ষ্টাডিজ হয়, দিজ ষ্টাডিজ আৰ একচুৱেলি কমপ্লিটলি বেছড অন চিষ্টেমেটিক ষ্টাডিজ, চাইণ্টিফিক ষ্টাডিজ, এণ্ড দেয়াৰ ভিউ পইণ্টছ আৰ ডিফাৰেণ্ট ফ্ৰম দ্য common people's viewpoints. So psychologists are different from astrologers, they are different from tantrics, they are different from palm readers, but many people think that psychologists are same as astrologers because psychologists also are able to predict the behavior patterns of individuals, and all these are actually done by tantrics and palm readers also, and hence they are same as all those palm readers and astrologers. But psychologists are different from all those people because they systematically examine propositions that is based on data to develop principles about human behavior and other psychological phenomena. So on the basis of some systematic steps or principles, they always draw conclusions, and hence psychologists are different from all those people. So the next topic is known as the evolution of psychology. Now this topic states that there are several schools of psychology, and all these schools have their own thoughts. On the basis of their own experiments, their own studies, they have developed their own concepts. So there are different schools of psychology. So first school is known as the structuralism school. Okay, now psychology actually as a modern discipline which is influenced to a large extent by Western developments, but it has a short history. Now it grew out of ancient philosophy concerned with questions of psychological significance. So already আমি আগৰ ক্লাছত ডিছকাছ কৰিছিলোঁ যে সাইকোলজি একচুৱেলি সাইকোলজি ফাৰ্ষ্ট লেবৰেটৰীটো জাৰ্মানীৰ লেইপজিগত এষ্টাব্লিছ হৈছিল ইন দ্য ইয়েৰ 1879. So Wilhelm Wundt, he was the founder of first psychology laboratory, and he was interested in the study of conscious experience, and he wanted to analyze the constituents or the building blocks of the mind. So he studied mind, and by using introspection method actually he tried to study the mental processes. He used introspection method in his studies, and psychologists during Wundt's time analyzed the structure of the mind through introspection method only, and hence they were called structuralists. Okay, so introspection actually it was a procedure in which individuals or subjects in psychological experiments were asked to describe in detail their own mental processes or experiences. So in that sense, this method actually um, used only to study one's own mental processes. Okay, so as a method actually it did not satisfy many other psychologists because it was considered because it is very limited. It was considered less scientific because the introspective reports could not be verified by outside observers. So বেলেগ মানুহৰ মেণ্টেল প্ৰচেছবিলাক অবজাৰ্ভ কৰিব নোৱাৰি ইণ্ট্ৰস্পেকশ্যন মেথডৰ হেল্পত, সেইকাৰণে পিছৰ চাইকলজিষ্টবিলাকে কি কৰিছিলে এই ষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰেলিষ্টৰ ভিউ পইণ্টছবিলাকক ক্ৰিটিচাইজ কৰিছিলে আৰু তেওঁলোকে ইণ্ট্ৰস্পেকশ্যন মেথডটোক একচেপ্ট কৰা নাছিলে, কাৰণ ইণ্ট্ৰস্পেকশ্যন মেথডৰ হেল্পত অকল নিজৰ মেণ্টেল প্ৰচেছবিলাককহে আমি অবজাৰ্ভ কৰিব পাৰোঁ বা ষ্টাডি কৰিব পাৰোঁ. ইট ইজ নট পচিবল টু অবজাৰ্ভ অৰ এনালাইজ আদাৰ পাৰ্চনছ মেণ্টেল প্ৰচেছেছ বাই ইউজিং ইণ্ট্ৰস্পেকশ্যন মেথড এণ্ড হেন্স দিছ মেথড ইজ ক্ৰিটিচাইজড. আৰু সেইকাৰণে ষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰেলিষ্টক কি কৰা হৈছিলে ক্ৰিটিচাইজো কৰা হৈছিলে. And this led to the development of new perspective in psychology. And the next school is known as the functionalism school. Now, American psychologist William James, who had set up a psychological laboratory in Cambridge, Massachusetts, soon after the setting up of the Leipzig laboratory, developed what was called a functionalist approach to the study of the human mind. Actually, William James, he believed that psychology should focus on the mind. It should not focus on what actually the mind is. We should focus on how behavior functions in making people deal with their environment, what the mind does and how behavior functions. Okay, how behavior functions in making people deal with their environment. In that sense, this school is known as the functionalism school. Here emphasis is given on the functions of the mind, not on the structure of the mind. In that sense, it is known as functionalism. Now, for example, functionalists focus on how behavior enable people to satisfy their needs. So according to William James, consciousness as an ongoing stream of mental process interacting with the environment form the core of psychology. So this person defines psychology as the science of consciousness. A very influential educational thinker of the time is known as John Dewey. He used functionalism to argue that human beings seek to function effectively by adapting to their environment. So this psychologist mostly emphasized on the functions of the mind and the behaviors, how they deal with the environment. So all these are some important actually studies, and hence they are known as the functionalism or functionalist, or that school is known as the functionalism school. The next school is known as the Gestalt psychology, Gestalt school. So in the early 20th century, a new perspective that is called Gestalt psychology emerged in Germany as a reaction to the structuralism of Wilhelm Wundt. So this school focused on the organization of perceptual experiences. So this school argued that when we look at the world, our perceptual experience is more than the sum of the components of the perception. In other words, what we experience is more than the inputs received from our environment. So here emphasis is given on the holistic aspect. So when we perceive something, we perceive it as a whole, not part by part actually. In that sense, this school emphasized on holistic perception. So perception is more than the elements according to this school. For example, light from a series of flashing bulbs falls on our retina, we actually experience movement of light. When we see a movie, we actually have a series of rapidly moving images of still pictures falling on our retina. Thus, our perceptual experience is more than the elements. Experience is holistic, experience is Gestalt. Now, this school actually was forwarded by Max Wertheimer, and he was followed by Olga Kohler, Kurt Kofka, and all the psychologists mostly emphasized on the perceptual field and holistic perception and as a whole concept and so on. The next school that is known as behaviorism school. Now, the founder of behaviorism school was John B. Watson, and this person was greatly influenced by the work of Ivan P. Pavlov. Now, around 1910, Watson rejected the ideas of the mind and consciousness as subject matters of psychology, and he actually used experimental method in his studies. Now, according to him, scientific psychology must focus on what is observable and verifiable, and he used introspection method, criticized introspection method and used experimental method. কাৰণ তেওঁৰ মতে ইন্ট্ৰস্পেকশ্যন মেথডে বেলেগৰ বিহেভিয়াৰ্ছবিলাক অবজাৰ্ভ কৰিব নোৱাৰে, সেইকাৰণে এক্সপেৰিমেণ্টেল মেথডেহে কি কৰিব পাৰে, আনৰ বিহেভিয়াৰ্ছবিলাক অবজাৰ্ভ কৰিব পাৰে, এণ্ড এক্সপেৰিমেণ্টেল মেথড ইজ কমপ্লিটলি চাইণ্টিফিক ইন নেচাৰ, এণ্ড হেন্স by using experimental method he studied the behaviors of people. Because experimental method is scientific method, and scientific psychology according to him must focus on what is observable and verifiable, and he defined psychology as a study of behavioral responses which can be measured and studied objectively. So behaviorism of Watson actually was further developed by many other psychologists who are known as behaviorists. Some prominent behaviorists are B.F. Skinner, who developed the operant conditioning theory, and then Hull, and some other psychologists who are known as the behaviorists and who used experimental method in their studies. The next school is known as the psychoanalysis. Now, psychoanalysis actually it is one system founded by Sigmund Freud. Now, Sigmund Freud, he is known as the father of abnormal psychology, father of clinical psychology, and he founded this psychoanalysis as a system to understand and cure psychological disorders. Actually, he was a neuropsychiatrist, and as a neuropsychiatrist, he was very much curious to know the causes of mental illness, and in his studies, he developed this theory of personality also, and he developed several concepts like id-ego concepts, then there that is known as the structure of personality, and the 3 levels of mind, that is conscious, preconscious, unconscious mind, and ego defense mechanisms, and the 5 stages of personality development, and also the psychoanalysis as a therapy. Psychiatrist হিচাপে একচুৱেলি তেওঁ যিহেতু পেচেণ্টবিলাকক অবজাৰ্ভ কৰিছিল আৰু অবজাৰ্ভ কৰি দেখিছিল যে পেচেণ্টবিলাকৰ মেইন প্ৰব্লেমবোৰ একচুৱেলি কি হয়, মানে হিডেন আৰ্জেছবিলাকৰ কাৰণে হয়, বা মানে ডিজায়াৰ্ছ যিবিলাক আনকনচিয়াছ মাইণ্ডত ষ্ট'ৰ কৰি থয় সেইবিলাকৰ কাৰণে একচুৱেলি মানুহৰ মেণ্টেল প্ৰব্লেম হয় বুলি তেওঁ গম পাইছিল, আৰু সেইকাৰণে তেওঁ কি কৰিছিলে, আনকনচিয়াছ মাইণ্ডৰ ওপৰত বেছিকৈ এম্ফেচাইজ কৰিছিলে, আৰু আনকনচিয়াছ মাইণ্ডৰ থকা প্ৰব্লেমবোৰ যদি তেওঁ মানে জানিব পাৰে তেতিয়াহ'লে যে প্ৰব্লেমবোৰ কিয়ৰ কৰিবলৈ ইজি হয় সেই কথাত তেওঁ ফিল কৰিছিলে, আৰু সেইকাৰণে তেওঁ মানুহৰ মনত থকা ভিতৰত সোমাই থকা যিবিলাক থটছ সেইবিলাক তেওঁ একচুৱেলি মানে কনচিয়াছ ষ্টেটলৈ আনিবলৈ বিচাৰিছিলে, আৰু সেইবোৰ কাৰণে তেওঁ এই মানে পাৰ্চনেলিটি ষ্ট্ৰাকচাৰ বা পাৰ্চনেলিটি মানে থিয়ৰিটো তেওঁ কি কৰিছিলে, প্ৰপ'জ কৰিছিলে, আৰু হি ইজ এ ভেৰি পপুলাৰ পাৰ্চন ইন দ্য ফিল্ড অফ psychology. The next school is known as the humanistic perspective. Now, this perspective, actually humanistic perspective in psychology, took a more positive view of human nature. Humanists such as Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow emphasized the free will of human beings and their natural striving to grow and unfold their inner potential. And as a humanistic psychologist, they mostly emphasized on the positive aspect of life actually, and the growth of human life, human beings, and how people can achieve their self-actualization. So all these were the topics are studied by humanistic psychologists. Now, Carl Rogers, he was the founder of self-theory of personality, and he also developed one therapy that is known as client-centered therapy. And Abraham Maslow is a very popular psychologist who developed self-actualization theory, and that theory also is known as the need hierarchy theory of motivation. And this psychologist mostly emphasized on the positive aspect of life and growth of human beings. And they argued that behaviorism, with its emphasis on behavior as determined by environmental conditions, undermines human freedom and dignity and takes a mechanistic view of human nature. So as a humanistic psychologists, they mostly emphasized on the development of human beings. Then the next perspective is known as the cognitive perspective. Actually, jibilak perspective ami already approach ami already palu. He gutekhini mane ke a cognitive perspective to alop different hoy. Now, cognitive perspective actually mainly focuses on how we know about the world. So, cognition or meaning to ami prothome janibo lagibo. What is cognition? Now, cognition actually is the process of knowing. Okay, so it involves thinking, understanding, perceiving, memorizing, problem solving, and host of other mental processes by which our knowledge of the world develops, making us able to deal with the environment in specific ways. Okay, so by using all these processes, we are able to gain information and we are able to get the knowledge about different things of the world. In that sense, mental processes or the cognitive processes actually are the important processes, and all these processes actually are regulated by brain only. Now, some cognitive psychologists view the human mind as an information processing system like the computer. So, they state that our mind is like a computer because it processes information, store information, retrieve information like a computer. So, modern cognitive psychology views human beings as actively constructing their minds through their exploration into the physical and social world. So, this view is sometimes known as constructivism. Okay, so modern view to cognitive psychologists to viewpoint, they say that viewpoint is known as constructivism because our mind is actively constructing, constructing through their exploration into the physical and the social world. In that sense, it is known as constructivist viewpoint. Now, Jean Piaget, who is known as a popular developmental psychologist, his view of child development actually is considered a constructivist theory of the development of mind. Now, another Russian psychologist, Vygotsky, he went further to suggest that the human mind develops through social and cultural processes in which the mind is viewed as culturally constructed through joint interaction between adults and children. In other words, while for Piaget, children actively construct their own minds, Vygotsky took a view that mind is a joint cultural construction and emerges as a result of interaction between children and adults. So, in this segment, we have discussed several important topics such as understanding mind and behavior. That topic states that mind and behavior are highly interrelated. Mind influences our behavior also. If our mind is healthy, if our mind is strong, then definitely we can overcome several difficulties actually that are available in our body. In that sense, mind and behavior are highly related. Then the second topic, it states that there are some popular viewpoints actually, they are completely based on hindsight, but popular notions are not always same as psychologists' viewpoints because psychologists are always psychologists draw conclusions on the basis of some systematic studies. Psychological conclusions are always based on facts and observations. And third topic, that is evolution of psychology, it states that there are several schools of psychology and there are different psychologists and thinkers who have developed their own viewpoints. And these schools are structuralism school, functionalism school, gestalt school, behaviorism school, psychoanalytic school, humanistic school, cognitive school, and modern cognitive viewpoint that is known as constructivism. So, thank you.